everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. Tonight we're talking more Deadly Class. First part of my kind of remender week is we'll be talking Righteous Thirst for Vengeance tomorrow, but I got my Deadly Class crew with me tonight, and we got my man Gor Vidal in the house. What is going on, sir? How are you?
Good evening, JP. How are you?
I am good.
Thank
are you looking forward to talking about this with us tonight?
Absolutely. Oh, yes, yeah. Absolutely. I'm a little
worried.
Great.
You even sent us music. We'll have to touch on that. Is that you wanted us to think about with this. So we'll have to talk about that at some point, too. We got my man, Bearded Comic Bro, who, if you don't know, is very, very close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Creeping.
And if you have not subscribed to him, go get it done because it's worth it. Just for, if nothing else, for, name that character is worth, subscribing for sure.
The missus is the only reason to subscribe to my channel.
Well,
it's the truth. So
she's bonus. You can put out some other good content too, but that is definitely a great video series you guys do. Right. And last but not least, we got Haley. We got Chad Comic Girl. What is going on?
I'm excited to talk about this. This is such a crazy volume.
I am very excited to talk about this because the further we get in, the more it kind of keeps hooking me more and more. And something weird just popped on my computer, so I'm hoping that doesn't mean like my computer's about to restart or something. I think I'm okay. So I don't know what that little window was, but I think I'm okay. So looks like we got GT Key in the house. Hopefully we'll get some other folks in here soon to hang out with us. But yeah, so let's start with Haley, since she said she's so excited. What were your overall thoughts just on Volume 4 here?
It was just complete wildness and the way that people are turning on each other. So when I first had read this, I was very audibly gasping at certain panels and was no, they didn't. They did. I was just very I couldn't contain myself while reading it, and it was such good storytelling, but I was shocked. It was, it felt like Game of Thrones.
There's a lot of,
they wouldn't do that. No, they would. So yeah, that was kind of my reaction to all of this, the whole volume.
Gor, obviously you've read this originally a long time ago. On both then and now on the reread, what are your overall thoughts just on this volume, just in general when you first read it?
This volume, I'll say this: a fellow YouTuber that's been with me for a while. I want to say at the end of this volume, he stopped reading the comic.
Really?
Yeah, and he was.
How?
How do you do that?
Well, you remember the end, and.
Yeah.
There is, and to this day, although we've discussed it on YouTube, he may come back and read it.
Right.
And it is, at this point with this book, you should just expect to just be shocked or not be shocked anymore, because you're going to be in. Whatever you expect is not going to go in the direction. And like I commented the first time on our show with you, is don't get attached to these characters.
Right.
I mean, if you're the type of person who says, I have to like a character to like a book, and like I told you guys, for me, that makes no sense to me. I have to find them interesting. But this was a very surprising issue. And I thought of Greg as we're going to do this, because Greg said, I want more school stuff. Well, you got it, and I don't know if you like any of this, Greg. But this is now we are definitely in Lord of the Flies territory. Mm-hmm. Remender has said so with this issue, this issue here, which is the first one, would be issue number 17, which begins the volume of Die for Me, and the afterwards. But even if he didn't say it, as a reader, you know it's Lord of the Flies, and the emergence of Shabnam, which is a reverse of the character in Lord of the Flies, who has an early demise. Here, he is king of the throne.
Yeah, the master manipulator. Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
Very dangerous.
So, Greg, initial thoughts on this volume. I'm curious because you did. You've been like, I want more school stuff. I want more school
I'm
stuff.
worried about
Yeah,
you guys.
I wanted more school stuff, but like school stuff. This is like this was like Gor. You said Lord of the Flies. This is like if the boys were doing an episode of like from Community of the paintball episodes, all right, like where they're just going buck wild in the school. This is it, but just leveled up to 1,000th degree here. Like, no, when I was saying school, like I don't need the setting. I want it more of like, oh, we're gonna teach you how to be an assassin, and I guess they are by just saying go do this. But
you mean like the random like kids running and just trying to kill each other everywhere.
it's like, man, where are your teachers at?
It's like poison and chainsaws and
Yeah.
I will say this. This was probably my favorite overall volume that I've read so far. And I really enjoyed it. And I think I've enjoyed it from the idea of I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And for me as someone who consumes movies and media in any form of, if I go, oh, I did not see that happening, I'm going to enjoy that more just because like I feel like, oh, this is going to happen because we're expecting it. So I don't know what to expect, and and we'll get to other parts in the story later and stuff, but I really like it where I go, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so far this had me multiple times going, no, really? No. So I'm in.
So yeah, I would have to second Greg's thought. Is I think this was definitely my favorite volume, which is why it kind of surprised me that your friend was like, no, after this. And I get that, but I guess it's also a cheat because like I've seen enough to know that like certain characters survives or whatever. At least one of them does, but like despite what appears here. But I just the free for all, the twists and turns. I didn't see all the betrayals coming, all the different machinations going on behind the scenes. So I just enjoyed the heck out. It is a crazy, messed up ride, and this whole volume does not really, even like when they do slow it down at times, like it just moves at a pace that like even the conversations and stuff like that I just really enjoyed the heck out of. And yeah, it took all my willpower not to turn the next page and keep going. And I don't have very much willpower, but it took all of it. So I am super excited.
Well, and to go off of that, I feel like what I really found interesting about this volume, we've all talked about so often how much we love the love triangle aspect of Deadly Class, and that is put theoretically on the back burner for volume 4. Like it's pretty much non-existent in this volume. And for it to then, I think for them to be able to put something that we've all really enjoyed on the back burner and say, no, we're going to get to more, like that just is really good storytelling from my end of like, there's so much more to explore, and I'm sure we'll revisit elements of that and stuff. But I was like, man, that's good. That's good writing.
Yeah. I mean, they took what had been a lot of the centerpiece of what was kind of going on in terms of the characters, and we're like, yeah, well, that's not important right now, and all this other stuff, and it may not be important again for maybe ever in the way that it was to the beginning. So we'll just have to see where it goes. But all right, so yeah, we open sort of with that page. First with Marcus running out, and then that page I just showed of the complete and total free-for-all. At the end of the last volume, we got the announcement that the freshman final was Hunt the Rats, and certain students have been given rats all through the year for whatever reason, and it was kill or be killed, and the rats had to survive for a certain amount of time, and in order to like get off the hook. So what did you think of this crazy opening? I'll let Greg go first now. These first, I don't know, 10 pages or so of just, maybe even more than that. What is it? Like almost that whole issue is just nonstop hunting and fighting and stabbing and shooting and
Dude, like I've never seen so many ways that you can kill somebody in a school. This way, like there's like fire extinguisher, axe, bow, like
It's not Sunnydale.
No. No, it is not. And this was is the first issue that was tough for me to read from the mindset of there were so many characters involved in this. I forgot so much of who they were and their roles that represented because it had been, I don't know, a month since we read this last time.
Right. And there's a lot of characters you just haven't had much screen time
right.
that are like in here. Yeah.
And I mean, just to see what they're doing up, and setting up here with this, and it again, this first issue, you're just like, what are they doing? Like, there's nobody is safe, and you see, you've started to see the groundwork laying. I'm blanking on the name, the roommate of Marcus's, who
Shabnam,
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Like we saw the groundwork in the last volume of him kind of being who he is, but we're really getting to see him set up for what he's trying to do in this issue. And dude is like manipulative, and it's like, holy cow, he's using his brains.
Yeah. I mean, he clearly is not a threat to anyone physically. So he's used information in his mind and leverage to make himself, a threat, to put himself in a position where not just can he survive in this situation, he potentially can thrive. And yeah, I mean, we get that right off the bat. He's got information on everybody. He goes right to what he sees as the biggest, power player in the most dangerous force, and he's making an alliance and giving him weapons and and information. And yeah, he's definitely being very manipulative. Gor, what did you think of this opening and all the craziness as we go through this wild first issue and sequence of everything that's happening?
Well, like I said earlier, it's not Sunnydale, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know how far Buffy will get to this, but certainly the emergence of Shabnam as a very dangerous character in this storyline is something that, and how resentful he is,
yeah,
and how angry he is. But what he's very good at, he finds someone's weakness and he's able to exploit it with something that Ling has taught them, right?
Yeah.
And he's able to do that. He's able to turn people against each other quite well. It's like in the early 2000s on all those reality shows like Big Brother and all those emerged, right? Survivor. Yeah. The people that were able to go to the end were the people like Shabnam.
Yeah.
And at first they appear very sympathetic and likable, but as the program progresses, or as here in the comic progresses, you end up having this deep contempt for them. But also, I mean, he quotes Machiavelli at one point. You do have to admire how smart he is,
yeah,
and what he's able to do. Now, when I was reading this, for me, I was thinking, at this point, I wasn't exactly sure if Maria was dead or not.
Right.
And but I was focusing on who Marcus was blaming for her death. But here we learn he finally determines that it wasn't. It was in the end Ling was the one who was responsible, in his mind, at least for her death. And the story was very surprising for me, and with, as we'll get into, it's the betrayal, and also the fact that the rats seem to be the scholarship kids.
Right.
You get a scholarship to Yale, you get a scholarship to Stanford, University of Chicago, and one of these major universities, and then you realize you're on a scholarship, and if you want to continue, you're going to have to survive, not with grades, but here physically.
Yeah. At
least make it for those 7 days. And then, as we learn here, is some of those rats turn, and we'll discuss here in a very shocking way. And disturbing way, but very realistic way. Like we said like I said on the first week when we discussed this is the complete opposite of any of the John Hughes films.
Yeah, for sure. Haley, what about you? What did you think of this? Basically, the whole first issue of all of issue 17 is basically this mad dash to survive the initial free for all at the school. And what do you think about it?
Well, I love there's like these like little moments where you're like, there's this alliance, there's this couple. Like it gives you these small moments where you're like, there's trust between these people, only to see it repeatedly shattered in the subsequent issues. And like,
right,
to see that in all of these different kinds of relationships, I felt like no one and nothing is safe. No. And there is like nothing between any of these people for the most part that can like keep them together. Like there's the people that you held closest to you, the people that you loved are turning on each other. And it just comes down to like when you're forced to survive, like how the worst can come out in all of these characters. And it's just like very brutal, and Shabnam is so evil. But like he just makes such a good, like he's such a compelling character. And I think in the earlier issues when Marcus initially stands up for him, Victor, I think, makes a statement of like, oh, well, you don't really even know like who he is or what you've done. Yeah. And it's this like, you know, the assumptions because of like what he looks like and like who he is, and the like kind of jock nerd dynamic that you see in high schools, that like you're falling into this trap of like, oh no, like Victor's like this brute, but Shabnam's like kind of evil.
Yeah.
So I really liked how they like he turned those tropes on their head with these storylines.
Yeah, I mean, Victor does. Like, I mean, Victor is ultimately not Marcus's friend, but he also gives him the sort of the best piece of advice he gets here, is he warns him right off the bat about shit. He's like, no, you don't. This is not somebody that's, you know, like that you want to save. And yeah, we've talked about him, so we got to show the like the little like just the plotting at the last page of the issue. This first issue is he's so good. You know, like king at his throne sort of thing. As he sent Victor and others to go do his bidding to kill these rats. I mean, we see, so the vast majority of the issue is a free-for-all of them trying to get out of school. We see Marcus and Petra like team up, and then they find Billy, and Willie and Saya sort of like gonna help them, and they're like are gonna help Billy, but they're like no, they're not rats, you gotta come with us, and they let them go, sort of. With like Willie and Saya let them go. They managed to get out, but then we immediately see, you know, we see Shannon's like plan, and he's plotting with Willie's boys to turn him against him, and he's plotting with Victor to get Marcus, and he's plotting, you know. I just thought the whole thing was just brutal, but despite it being nonstop, I thought, like you said, there's these really good little moments that set up so much that comes later in the volume. For sure. So anything else in this first issue you guys want to touch on before we move kind of along?
Again, I gotta mention, like I think we did last time, but Russ Wooten, the lettering in this first issue with all the sound effects for everything, like
you get like crack,
you hear it, like and it's not in a 1966 hokey Batman way, you know, like without, but like, and I say that as someone who loves that, so but like it feels just like, you know, like I'm watching a movie. Like there are parts where I'm like, oh, if I was watching this, I'd have to turn it down so I don't have to wake up the kids because it's going to be really loud here, right? Like, but I just think that's a testament to the lettering.
Yeah, it's really well done. I mean, the art. We don't talk about Wes Craig enough. We don't talk about like letters and colorists don't get nearly talked about as much as they should. And they like everybody in this book like does a fantastic job, I think, for sure. Yes, Miss Cat, I know you want to. So, all right, so we get into the next issue, and it obviously starts with this crazy panel of like the school on fire and everybody running and
everyone's dead
away. And then out of nowhere we get this Marcus, Petra, wait up. It's me, Paulie. And and I'll be honest, I didn't go back and check because I wanted to wait and see what you guys said. I have no recollection of Polly before this moment.
Honestly, I don't think I did either. I was kind of like, oh, I don't really know.
So I still don't know if he existed before this moment anywhere in the book or not. But like he just comes out like they're buddies and they're like, dude, we don't know. Yeah, because they're like, we don't know you. Who are you? Like everybody likes Polly.
Well, and that's what I thought was so funny because I feel like I don't want it. I hope he isn't in the previous because I want him to just show up in this because to me, like it's like that, Star Trek joke right there of anyone who's in Star Trek who wears the red shirts dies, right?
Yeah.
And so like you see him, he's got the scope is on him and he's about to die. And he goes, and I think like he's like, I'm in my lucky red shirt. I'm like, he's gonna kill him. Like he's gonna have him kill him. And sure enough, like you're like, oh no, I'm like, there he goes again. Just to me, it was there was making that pop culture reference and then turning it going, yeah, I'm gonna acknowledge it, but I'm not gonna do that. Like,
yeah,
so good.
Yeah, because he's immediately in the scope, and it's like, and then Victor's like, no, not Polly. Like,
everyone deserves doesn't deserve like a clean death. I mean, like that was hilarious to me.
So, but then after that initial escape in the yard, we really get sort of the depth of what Shabnan has been doing and what he knows and his manipulations. In this next scene where he, what is the guy that, like the guy comes in and is like, what do you want from me? He thinks he's,
Kendall.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's calling him Piggy and he just like thinks he's above, and then he realizes that no, like, I have leverage on you, dude. And like over these next few pages, we really see where his power comes from because it's not from a physical confrontation. It's from knowledge and information. And so what did you guys think of this? Like we talked about him in the first issue, but this is really where you get to see who I feel like this is really where you get to see who this guy is on these next couple of pages. Gora, I think it's your turn to go first. What did you think of that little section?
Well, basically, how it, before we get to that, we get this, I like this passage here. And
oh yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, one of you did earlier about the depth that Remender's able to add to these characters. I mean, there's a reason why Shabnan is the way he is. And he says he wasn't the kind of person who took the high road. His sad life was their fault. And he was going to show them all. Yeah. He ruled with fear. He had taken the school's lessons to heart. Being ethical gets you killed. And he goes on about the man's character with this nice profile. And certainly this thing with Kendall and with Stephen, and certainly this would have been the late 80s, where to be someone who was openly gay in an environment where it was considered something deviant, like it is here for his father, could destroy you.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's like the context of this period. I mean, I remember people that I knew that were gay. I mean, it was basically this part of Texas. It could be dangerous for you. Yeah. Absolutely. But he's got no qualm about it. What's interesting about Shabnan is, in a way, he should be able to identify with this man as being someone who's being marginalized, right?
Right.
And yet he takes the opposite road. He goes towards the dark angels, not towards the light in any way. And what he has him do, what you must do, you must kill the man you love. That's just the way it's going to be. Otherwise, I'm blackmailing you. Your father's going to find out what you are. Note I say the word what, because again, that's what he would be, a what. Not a man, not a human being.
Yeah.
But something that deserves to be exterminated. Basically. Yeah. And basically much of the issue with this volume is about those betrayals.
Yeah.
And the title again is Die for Me. You die for someone you love, right? That's the idea. but it could be also interpreted, "You die for me for what I want."
Yeah.
There's many ways to interpret the title of this volume, and I think it's intentional by Remender.
For sure. Haley, what about you? What do you think of our full exposure to who Shabnam is here?
Well, he's just so hateful, and I feel like when you've had someone who is like really vengeful and has been like consistently been put down, and then is having a taste of power at the same time, like, right, he is not at this point has been in a position where he's able to really rise above everyone else because of so much of it was like these like physical killings or whatever the case may be. And there's like such a pleasure in bringing these people down and like showing them like who exactly like he could be, especially which is in the moment with Kendall, because Kendall comes in so ready to like, you know, like you said, calling him Piggy, making him try to feel small, and immediately it's turned around as like, oh, you think you have me? No, you don't. And it's like consistently Shabnam doing that to everyone, into every group. He's infiltrated every single group, and you're just sitting there like, what is going to happen and how are these people going to react, because they're being, all of their deepest secrets are being held like over their head. And that the betrayals that come because of it, I felt like were really shocking. And, you know, in a way you anticipate, because there's so much like violence happening in the first volume, like this is about to be crazy, but the fact that it's still kind of like hurt or stung or shocked, I felt was just really great storytelling. And at the same time, I was like, is Shabnam going to win? Because you're like, also at this point, you're like, oh, there has to be a way, because we're so used to the story lines going in the way of our main characters or protagonists, maybe not so much in Deadly Class, but that's at least kind of what you're rooting for in some ways. Yeah. And it just Remender's constantly like, yeah, no, like Gor was saying, like, don't, anything you anticipate, it's like not gonna happen. It's gonna take like a left turn and then another left turn, and then you're gonna end up somewhere completely new.
Yeah. But you, Greg, what did you think of Shabnam here?
I mean, it just sets up who this character is, right? Like, because he's setting the stage for what he brings to the table. Because I think I forget, which I shouldn't, that every character that's in this school has some talent of like being an assassin, right? Like, so I think like to my, you know, I'm like, oh,
they're killers before they get here. Yeah.
What?
Supposedly they're all killers before they get here.
Right.
Or at least
so they should all bring something to the table. And and you know, for Shabnam's talking about like where he's like, oh, he says I'm like poison and all of this. That's for, that's for the monkeys. Like this is what I bring to the table. And is he telling them like, hey, this is what you're gonna do? He takes that, as Gord mentions a lot, the John Hughes stuff. He flips it on this head of there again, because he's like, this time you go do my homework. Yeah. And the next sequence where you see, the preppy kid who's been basically told by the nerd to go kill the person he loves, the most dejected look on his face. And it stands out so much because it's all blue paneling, all light blue, and then it's just that one panel right there where it's that red. And it just is so well done, because you're just like, you see the look in his eyes of like, holy buckets.
Yeah.
Like, man, what about like, and so again, it's the depth of these characters that we're getting to say, like, what they bring to the table, right? That it's not all just like, oh, I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to, I'm going to use my intellect against you. And I might not be the fastest, strongest, but I can utilize other things. That's why it's like, lock class is my favorite, because everyone hides their secrets and wear stuff that they don't want with the lock. I was like, so I'm going to figure out how to get that.
All right. Well, go ahead.
Something that just came to mind too, of like how we think about all these characters, because they're all killing. And yet because of the way that he's utilizing people's like secrets, and like he comes out looking more evil than anyone else. Yeah. You're like, but Victor's out here and he's killed a bunch of people too. But there's something about like Shabnam that you're like, oh no, this is a different kind of bad. And I also think that's interesting to kind of think about, why everyone else.
It almost comes off like he's reading your diary, right? Like, and like I feel like that's like the biggest, like, if you're like, oh, you like don't read the diary, like, man, that's shady. Like, that's personal stuff. Like, you don't do
read
that.
Marcus' diary and gave it to
he
him.
read Marcus's.
Right.
Yeah, we
And,
talked about that.
right. Like, so like it's like but you're right. Like, you're like, oh man, the killing, that's fine, but like, man, break into his locker and find out what's that.
Yeah, when he's like, took the Kendall's like love letters. He's like, and I'm gonna send them to your right ring father, and I made copies of them. You're like, this is like another level.
It's Victor. It's this weird thing because they're all like, even our heroes are all killers. They're all, to a certain degree, there's no Captain America in this school, right? There's no here to do the right thing kind of person, but it's all degrees. And what Shabnam's shown is he's willing to do, like, Victor's willing to, like, he's gonna like kill you, he's gonna out physical you, he's gonna like physically dominate you in a way. Shabnam's like, well, I can't do that, so I'm going to do, there's nothing too dirty, there's no information, so there's nothing that's Victor doesn't care about your like, he's not going to make it personal in a way that Shabnam does. Like, Shabnam wants to kill you with your deepest, darkest fear, secrets, most personal things, and he's going to use that to kill you. Victor's just going to use a bullet or a knife, and there's a definitely, yeah, it's weird how it comes off. Because of that, he's more evil, because it is more personal in a way, the way he goes about it. Gor, you're thinking. I feel like you got something to add to that.
No, it goes back to that. Everything is personal with him. Like the part that I read here in the story is that deep resentment. You must remember, I mean, we all know the story of Hitler. He was a failed artist, but he came from a lower middle class family and living in Austria among the aristocrats, and he was considered basically lower class. And this resentment built up, and that's how National Socialism developed in Germany in that sense. This deep resentment, and you start targeting people to blame for your problems.
Yeah,
and you're very smart about it, and Shabnam is really good at it. The sense of betrayal throughout this volume, I mean, it did surprise me, and what's going to happen here with Kendall and Steven, but then we learn later on with what Ling does to Saya and Willie.
Yeah.
It puts them in a situation what they must do, again, blackmailing them. I think this labyrinth that we're in, we're stuck in this labyrinth. And in order to survive, you must become almost like the Minotaur to get out of this.
Yeah.
You must kill Theseus. You must become some kind of monster in a way to survive. It's sometimes when I've been thinking about this book, discussing with you, the three of you, and I'm fluctuating between if this is a drama or a tragedy. I don't know at this point. Again, I have to rethink all this. And he's so good, like you said, in the writing, and also you highlighted the lettering, everything about it. Is you see panels like this scene between Saya and Willie, where Willie reveals to her that it was him who killed his father.
Yeah.
And this was like, what? Yeah, and already what remember there's being layers and layers of weight here, of heaviness upon you, upon the reader. And guess when you have like, oh, this person's life is really sad. Oh, you have no idea.
Yeah. It just like makes it work.
2 issues later, there's another layer.
Yeah.
And and it's it just puts me always in a contemplative mood, this story. But these are the stories that I like. I like this, even though it's hard. It hurts, but it just makes me see things in a much different way. And I put myself in these people's shoes. And I hate to say this, even Shabnam's.
Yeah. So, well, we're 30 minutes in, and so we're going to move a little bit because we spent a lot of time on that. But the next sequence is we've seen Shabnan send Willie's boys after Willie and Saya, even though they're not rats. They're hunting them, and we get the scene where like Saya's like, okay, you're gonna have to defend yourself, and she's like, you've done it before, and he reveals the truth. So we get this sequence of her basically fighting, like we see Saya doing what she does, and she's basically routing his friends, what were his group, only for her to fail with the last guy. Like he's got the upper hand. It appears like he's going to kill her, and sort of forces Willie into the situation to shoot her. Or to shoot what was his friend to save her. What did you guys think? What did you think of that whole sequence there? Haley, you're shaking your head.
Well, I just thought like this is like the first betrayal that we get, right? Because he opens up to her, and then she is like, this life would have been forced upon you either way. And then she does that to him. She forces his hand because she knows that he cares about her. And then he shoots someone who, I wouldn't know how much of like friends you would call them, but is like still in his group. And she pretends as if she didn't just do that. Like she lies to him. And then I also think in terms of betrayals too, of like lies that the reader is also receiving, is like Willie told Marcus a different story, and so now it's being exposed for the reality that he actually he did actually shoot his dad, because the whole aspect or the whole storyline that was happening beforehand was that Marcus killed that homeless guy because Willie couldn't do it. And so you're just like lie upon lie upon lie, and betrayal upon betrayal within like the people who are seemingly the closest and who seemingly care the most for each other. And that's where I think starting off the betrayals here with these characters in this volume is like no one and nothing is safe. And all of it is going to fall apart. Like the beginning of the end is really what this felt like. And when he comes to that realization of what she did, I was like, wow, that's shady. And then they get called in to see Master Ling. And I was, yeah. And basically they get sent to go kill what was their friends because Master Ling knows that they let him go earlier. So, So, Greg, what do you think about
comic books though? Because, good storytelling, because I saw that entire scene differently than Haley. I didn't see it as betrayal as much, because I saw it as she cares for Willie so much as a person that if he doesn't learn how to get over this fear of not being able to pull the trigger, he's not going to survive in this, waylay of things. And so if she doesn't do that and force his hand, he's not going to survive and he's going to die. And I think that to me puts it that she, whether right or wrong, she cares for him enough that she's like, you won't last in this school if you don't know how to get over this fear of what you're dealing with. And by her forcing his hand, it's happened. So like that, I love that. Like
that's so interesting.
It's just so.
No, you're both right.
Like now that you've said that, I'm like, I'm reframing it in my mind. Okay.
No, but Haley's point is basically is she knows that he cares for her,
right?
And she's going to manipulate that to basically get to help him get over it.
So
like you need to get over this issue. I can't kill anybody. Yeah. But if you want to survive, you're going to have to. Now she does take a risk that he's going to do this by not reaching for the sword. She does take a risk by this, that he is eventually, but or maybe not. Maybe she's so sure he will pull the trigger to save me because he does care for me.
Yeah,
but that's why I think you're both correct. I think.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because it is a betrayal in the fact that like she knows he doesn't want this. He doesn't want this life. He doesn't. but she's going to force his hand because she thinks it's what's best for him going forward. And it's like, so she's doing it from a place of that it appears to be that she's doing it from a place where she cares about him. And yet, but it's still a betrayal.
It is.
In terms of, yeah. And it's, so you're both, like you said, you're both right.
It's such an unhealthy aspect of a relationship, right? Like, how often do we have, are there relationships in our lives where someone's like, well, I know what's best for you, and so I'm going to make you do it. And so that's why, like, it's complex. Like, it's not cut and dry. It's not black and white. There's not, like, that's why we're rooting for these kids who are killing people. We're like, yeah, come on. Like, because there is such gray area in this. And I think that is just another example of how gray it is of, like, what do you do in that situation?
Yeah.
These characters of Willie and Shabnam, when we meet them, they're like in reverse. When we meet Shabnam, he's huddled up in his room, reading a book, not getting invited to parties. We had no idea where he's going to be at this point.
Yeah.
When we meet Willie, he's a gangbanger, tough guy. And now we realize he's one of the most fragile characters in the story.
Yeah.
Emotionally, the poor kid, he's a child. And by this point, and so, but when we meet them, so we're going through this journey with these men and these women and these kids, I'm sorry. And where they begin is not where they are now. They're somewhere else. And as we're going to get to the next volume, or the next issue, I think it's the next issue, the one right after that, of what Willie must do and his breakdown with Marcus. Mm-hmm. And I have when we get to that issue, I have a question for you guys as to what you think happened. Yeah. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next issue. So we get that, and they basically, at the end of it, is they get assigned, like, you're if you don't kill Marcus, don't come back. Basically, it's what they're told. Like,
yeah,
they got to take care of
kill their families. Remember, he's going to kill their families.
Yes. So it's like, yeah, you're going to kill, if you don't kill Marcus and Billy, and I don't know that Petra is really part of this as much as it is Marcus and Billy, because those are the two that they were friends with that they let go more than anything. Yeah. But he's going to kill their families. He's going to, there's no, they have to go do this. So we pick up the story that they had escaped off campus, and we see, like, we get this whole sequence of Billy running from Victor. And, and Victor's just shooting up everybody. It's just indiscriminate. And he's running through a record store, and he's running through the kitchen of a restaurant, and, jumping out windows, and ultimately we get, like, this showdown in the alley. I guess we find out they were actually trying to set a trap for him, and so where it leads is they get the trap, and they're able to, at least for a short time, kind of slip away, or at least it appears that. So what did you think of this whole sequence? I think, Greg, I'll go to you this time. This whole sequence with Billy running and the trap, and then trying to get someplace to hide.
It was great, and I think I love the first page of this issue where it's running through the record store, because again, it's setting the stage for the dialogue that's going through, where the store owner is like, "Hey, don't buy this record because this is trash," and he's like, "What do you mean? Like, have you not?" And he's like, "Yeah, I've heard this dumb song over and over again." He goes, "Yeah, but the rest is so good." And I think, again, it's getting to that. There's so much layers in here, right? Of, like, where he's like, when we might look at someone for their one thing that we pick up on about them, but it's like, no, it's like, whew, that's so good. And then you just get them, like, running through everything, like, the store, the restaurant, and it to just see what, like, the over the topness of what they're going through and things. Yeah. It was, it was such an interesting thing, because it gets to the end when he finds them in the alley, and there you go. Victor and Billy are having this kind of, tit for tat, talking with each other of what's going on. And we just get 2 panels of Victor's backstory right there. And again, I'm just like, okay, like, I sympathize a little bit with Victor of why he's in the position that he's in, why he's there. Like, I still don't want him to win in any of it, but like
Yeah.
it just is like what these kids went through at such an early stage in their life and what it just made them devoid of, of hope and interaction in their life. Like, geez, this is where I go where, Gor, you say you're wondering if it's a drama or a tragedy. These backstories just keep making it a tragedy to me.
Yeah. Gor, what about you? What did you think of this whole sequence of Victor hunting Billy and then them trying to turn the table on him?
Before I get to that, though, I mean, to Greg's point about the tragedies, in the sense that with Victor's family, how horrendous they are.
Yeah.
And as we learned about Petra's family, how horrendous they are. And for these kids to have grown up in this environment and how awful it is. I mean, I mentioned the World War II example. I mean, it's whenever you learn something about the Second World War, and it's not just the concentration camps, just what happened within those 5, 6 years, how horrendous humanity can be toward each other when they can, because you can. And well, now all morality just slips away. And I guess in this point regarding Willie is we met Willie early on. He seemed like a nice kid. His father put him in this academy to, I guess, quote unquote, make him a man. Yeah. Deeply ashamed of him for being weak. Remember that panel when Willie's remembering the way his father talked to him? I never wanted you. Just telling him, basically you're a waste. You're beyond a disappointment. I never want you. And what this does to a child. And you see Willie here at the end after, he's able to evade Victor. But he's basically here. He's so you have Willie and Billy, right? Both very emotional, almost the names rhyme, almost are confusing. But they're very similar emotionally. They're broken kids. Because I want out of this. I don't want this anymore.
Yeah.
And already there had been a hint early on where Shabnan says he knew he had someone on the inside. And we learned that it's going to be him.
Well, we think we learn it's going to be him.
We think we're right. But yes, certainly regarding him. And then they finally they find shelter at F-Face's home.
Yeah, the place that Marcus ran from.
Mm-hmm. And then there's an infamous phone call. So,
yeah, we see the phone call. Somebody, as Shabnan puts it, one desperate rat calls him to give him info, and definitely Reminder makes you think it's Billy, that like Billy's betrayed them. So, Haley, what did you think of this whole this issue and this sequence and just the way this all went together here? There's a lot there, but
this issue was crazy. I think I loved getting Victor's backstory because you're consistently like, oh man, you're like, because you root for, Billy and Petra and Marcus, and then you get a deeper understanding of like why Victor is the way he is, and also the resentment. Like we're seeing on several levels like what a kind of resentment can build and fester in people. And for Shabnam, it's like the resentment that people like were putting him down, and for Victor, it's like this resentment of like I'm actually working so hard to earn love and respect and actually do all of my duties at this school, right? In some ways, it's like all of assassin stuff, but he's trying his hardest and is like resentful of the people who break the rules, like Marcus and Willie, and don't feel like they need to actually earn their spot. And then you hear what he's been through, and it makes so much sense. Like his father's reaction to what he saw his mother go through of like this like need to be validated in those ways. And I think that's what so many of these kids are seeking is validation constantly in just different ways because of the different traumas that they've gone through. And in some ways, Victor afterwards is like, I'm coming after Billy, even though Billy's the one who's like, no, we should leave him. We should not like kill him. And I think Victor would have actually respected even though doesn't want to die, would have respected Billy for killing him or them killing him versus just like leaving him there, because now he's just going to come after you because you couldn't do it. So I thought that was really interesting. But this kind of, again, desperation to just be done with this kind of life like that, I feel like Billy feels a kind of sympathy towards him as he's like hearing what Victor is telling him.
Yeah, for sure. Quick super sticker from Toby. Thank you, sir. That is much, much appreciated and unnecessary, but I always appreciate it. So I take it as a reward for this great conversation that the others are having, and I'm just like helping guide. So, but yeah, I agree with like a lot of what you guys are saying, and it's like Billy is just that, in his whole issue, he just comes across as desperate to be done. And you get Victor's backstory, and it's interesting. Is Victor is like, part of the reason he doesn't like a lot of these is he doesn't think they're not taking it serious. Like, this is everything to Victor. Like, in order to earn his father's respect, like, he's going to become the man that he couldn't be when he was just a boy. Like, what was a boy supposed to do in that situation? Like, nothing. Like, he couldn't have done anything. Yeah, there was nothing he could have ever done, but like, he's desperate again, like, to earn that validation and that respect. And whereas like Billy is obviously Billy and Marcus have already like taken care of his dad in a completely different way. And like, at this point, Billy's just like, I just went out. I just wanted to stop. And which is what leads to the scene at the end of the phone. And you're like, okay, who was the desperate rat that made the call?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. Hey, Kenneth. I can leave that up longer than that, but yeah. So, all right. Issue 20. So we get,
oh boy,
at the beginning, we get a lot of Marcus like contemplating here. We get Willie and Saya like trying to hunt them. We get a pretty decent sequence here in the middle of this issue of Petra, Billy, and Marcus like just kind of hanging out and sort of almost acting like normal teenagers, like, for a minute. Mm-hmm. Through the middle of this, like, they're basically one night away from getting done and getting out of here. I don't remember whose turn it is to go first. I'll let Gor go. What did you think of the sequence here of just them? Well, first of all, Marcus's kind of flashback of what he's been through, but then this whole scene of the three of them sort of for a moment kind of forgetting what they're going through and just like acting like teenagers and hanging out. And what did you think about that?
This is like a levity, like the eye before the storm. Like, you've gone to this tempest, right? And then you arrive here. And it does seem to provide some kind of levity to the story as they reminisce, as they talk, and they seem to, and he tells him, I think I really love you. They make a joke about it, right? But already underneath this, there's already a sense that somebody betrayed them. What does this mean? And, but if you don't mind, I think for me, what did this for me, this issue is the beginning, is this page here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then this beautiful panel here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And what Marcus is talking about, a walk in the park and looking for the swans, and his memory of Maria. And even before, he turns away from it because he sees it as something that's being needy. It's just a beautiful passage, like, the last weekend we were together, she took me to the park. I acted like I didn't want to go. Truth is, I really liked that she'll talk me into going places with her. She talked me going to places. I'm sorry. She'll talk me into going places with her. If that isn't a definition of love, I don't know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, you see at this point, like, him, like, it's taken all of this for him to truly, like, appreciate what he lost, what he had, and what he lost when he lost her, when she disappeared, and when she, apparently dead. And
my point is, in the sense that it begins with this sort of heaviness for us as a reader.
Yeah.
And then we have this moment of levity. This is what I like about this. It begins with heaviness, levity, and then it leads to tragedy.
Yeah.
And this is the emotional issue of this particular issue. And this one and the one after this are my favorite of this volume because they work brilliantly well together. And for me, it all begins with this narrative as he remembers Maria and a walk in the park, and they see the swans. And the swan, I see, is something symbolic in some way. But we'll get to that maybe later. So this moment here of levity was nice, but there's already for us there's a kernel there that's rotten somewhere in here, as we will see.
Okay. Haley, what about you? What did you think of there's a couple, like you said, there's a couple different things going on here. What did you think about the way this issue kicks off?
Yeah, I mean, I loved anytime he ends up writing in like the margins, like I always know it's just gonna like hit really hard. And there's the line where he says, happiness registers to me as a disappointment under construction. And I was like, I think so often all of these characters come because of their childhoods and because of what they've been forced to go through, their mindset is one of scarcity. So this, like, having that moment of receiving something, of getting the thing you want and just feeling like you're always going to lose it, and then never being able to appreciate it. I don't think Marcus is the only one who feels that way in this, and it's why there's so many, like, even in the relationships of love or friendship, there's so much toxicity and betrayal because they have not learned what it looks like to like love and care in healthy and normal ways. And but they're trying. Like there's still these moments, because then you get that like levity, or like, Marcus saying like he loves Billy, and they're having this like moment. And you kind of go to that like moment, like that endearing moment, and then all of a sudden you're back with like Kendall and Steven. And then it just kind of
that's
very quickly. You're just Saya, Victor, Willie, everyone shows up, everything's a mess. It's just like all of the paneling. You have like the lettering, like Greg has stated, is just so good. There's just so much action and movement. Like this, I feel like this specific issue is just like all over the place. In the best way possible. It's like really taking you almost through like a mini movie. You're like having like these like slow moments, this tender moment, this action, this violence, this tragedy. You're experiencing everything in this single issue.
Yeah. What about you, Greg? What did you think of the way this one opened? And then we'll talk about the last chapter in a second.
Kind of what everyone else has said already, but I think I'm so quick when I'm reading these stories and stuff, and I'm just my personal, I'm very quick to judge of like, you're an idiot, like you did this to yourself, like that's my mindset a lot of times when I'm just, and so I have to like pause, but like this is that same thing, right? When that panel where you're seeing that first page of them talking, of where he's happy, he is like, and he's so mad that he's happy because he can't enjoy his happiness because he's so afraid that his happiness is going to be taken away from him.
Yeah.
That he takes it away before it can even happen, right? Like he wants to take away that happiness so he can't be hurt. Like it's almost like he wants to be in control of the hurt. And so like this then makes sense for more of the actions that he did earlier in the previous issues, of where you're like, how do you do this? Like how, like, why would you, like, if you love Maria, like you care for her so much, why would you, and you start to see that you're like, I mean, how often do we see this with adults who can't figure out like loving themselves and, allowing themselves to be happy, that a teen who goes through the most tragic thing of, they're on a beautiful day walking through a park, with his parents, and his parents die, that and is taken away from them. Like it's the same thing. He doesn't want to take that away, so he almost puts himself out of that equation. And it, like Gor says, there's so much like, oh, that then it just feels like almost like it takes you into a scene like you're, you know, I don't know, in that 70s show, like they're in the basement just smoking and enjoying, you know, each other. And there's like, they're like, okay. And I think there's wisdom in that because this is a deep and heavy book. And to be like, you need a chance where you can just go, you know, and like we're, you know, you can tell like you know, like if you've ever been around the friends who like, oh, you have that one drunk friend who always gets like, all like, I love you, man. Like you're my best friend. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like how Marcus is right now with Billy.
Yeah.
And, like there's that sense of like just levity there where Billy's just like, listen, man, like you gotta buy me dinner kind of thing first.
Yeah.
And you like you laugh and you're like, okay, I can now you know, just pace myself because I know Remender's just gonna rip my heart out again and just make me feel miserable here in a little bit because he's, you know, making me feel easy here. And I just think it's, you know, because then it goes right into Kendall's story and like like what he has to do, and you're like, okay, he's, you know, he's gonna flip the script here and this is gonna be good, and you know, and then we get where we, you know, Marcus is gonna get away, and then the issue ends with Willie pointing a gun at him like, I'm gonna kill you, and it's just like, man.
So yeah, the second half of this is after we get a brief moment of Kendall and Steven, and they're basically plotting to get back at Shamnon, and then we move on to, yeah, they're found because of the phone call. They're found by Victor, but they're also found by Saya and Willie finally. Yep. But it's an interesting like sequence here. Is basically like as soon as Marcus leaves, everyone leaves. Like Petra and Billy get completely left alone here, and it's everyone's after Marcus. And you get this crazy sequence of Victor riding on the hood of the car and the cops. And it's just like this down the street. And yeah, you talk about the smash and the crash and the wee, you know, like just so like the lettering is, yeah. It's this whole crazy sequence, but Marcus thinks he slipped away only to, yes, have this, you know, Willie and Saya were waiting on him. And we did have a moment earlier in this about where Saya and Willie talked about, you know, you can't freeze up on me. We got to do this. Like, we don't have a choice. So what did you guys think about the fact that we were getting this confrontation here finally when you see that we're about to get this confrontation? What did you think when you flipped that page, Haley?
Like at the very end when you get the confrontation.
Yeah, before we get to the next issue, just what did you think about the fact that we were finally going to get this moment?
I think this moment was also when I was like, no, because like now he's actually, because right, Saya put him in a position to where he's like killed, and so you're like, is he going to be able
to do
this? Mm-hmm. And like I didn't feel certain that he would kill him, but you're just like, now we have this face off. And like, this has also been building in other ways, right? Because of the whole like, triangle, like saga. Yeah. And there's so many hurt feelings. So I was flipping that page so quick.
Yeah. Greg, what about you? What did you think when you saw that moment?
Well, again, it's one of those I'm like, what's going to happen here? Because, you know, earlier in this issue, you had Willie and Saya talking, you know, and there obviously is that unease because of the betrayal that happened, you know, in the library or wherever that was when she made Willie have to kill. And, you know, and they're arguing with each other. And she's like, I'm done. We're done. Like, this is it. And she goes, you got to do whatever you have to do, but stay out of my way. Yeah. And, you know, it sets the stage for what is Willie going to have to do here, right? And, you know, and it's like, and so now, like, the next issue, without getting into that yet, I'm like going, okay, we're going to see, like, is he going to do what he needs to do, or is he going to get in the way? Like, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, because I knew it was the last issue. I was like,
Yeah, so this last issue, like, all the different little plot threads that have been going through here, all the different relationships and all of it's going to hit the fan in ways that I don't think any of us necessarily expected. Let's first talk about we get Petra's backstory here, which is just like they're all. Well, we get more of Billy's backstory. Like he tells her some more details of his,
Right.
and then she gives him her. So they're telling each other their backstories, which are both just so effed up. But we're gonna skip to. I kind of want to just follow their storyline to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll deal with some of the others as we kind of go through this. What did you guys think about what happens between Petra and Billy? Greg, I think I'll let you go first this time. And then
Petra and Billy?
Yeah. So we get both their backstories here at the beginning, and then later in the issue, we get the finale of what happens to the two of them.
I mean, I was reading this issue with hesitation, and I was reading both their backstories with kind of like untrust for both of them.
Right.
Because I knew it, at least I assumed
one of them had made the phone call.
Yeah, I assumed one of them had to make the phone call. Like there was no way Marcus did it, so it was like one of them had to make the phone call. So I'm like, okay, who am I trusting? And whether it was Billy or Pedro, but I was just like, their backstories didn't hit as much with me as the other ones this time, because I was reading it now with, I don't trust either of you right now.
Mm.
And then once we found out it was Petra that was the one that made the phone call, then I felt like all the instant, like I felt sympathy for Billy because of his backstory. But until that moment, I was just like, I was skeptical of both of them. Like, both of you are lying. I don't know who, but and so like reading that at that moment, I was like, I wasn't as like, oh, well, I feel for him as much, because I'm like, no, one of you guys you betrayed someone, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But then to see how she killed, Billy the way she does, like, ooh.
Well, and the end of that sequence where she gets on yes, and they're like, die for me, Billy, and she's like staring into his eyes. It's just, creepy in a way that, like, well, because up to this point, we really didn't understand. We didn't know enough about Petra to really understand why she was there. She was just this person that Marcus had kind of latched onto in his loneliness. And Gor, what did you think of Petra and Billy here?
This side of Petra, I mean, when we get the backstory of her family, it's something, you would hear from the Manson family, something out of the 60s and 70s, right? Of some of the hedonism that took place with people. And that scene when she discovers the eyes of her mother in the refrigerator, and the way the father explains it is that once you look into those eyes, you're just not the same person again. The thing for me was a surprise that she basically took it to heart. And she deals with poison, as we know here. And almost in a way, you're seeing Petra as some kind of, not say typhoid Mary, but what she does with Billy and this sequence and how it's drawn by Wes Craig, you have here someone who's actually getting pleasure from this, looking into his eyes before he dies. And then she says, "I'm not afraid," meaning maybe she's no longer afraid. I mean, whatever issues she had before, or what, but just the pleasure that she gets out of this is interesting. Because maybe he made the phone call, maybe she did, but if she's getting vengeance on him for making the phone call, or for betraying them, it's how she kills him and how much he enjoys it. So at this point, we can't look at Petra the same way again.
Yeah.
And for Willie, for Billy, he's gone. Yeah. And now we have to deal with Willie and Marcus.
So, Haley, what did you think about this? Petra's turn here. Did you see this coming? Did you?
No, not at all. Well, because like you see the phone call and you're like, who is it? And I really thought it was Billy like the whole way through. And then then she's like, it was either this or all of us. And then you're like, oh no, she did this and is like framing and like killing him and framing him and like killing him as to like cover her own tracks, essentially. In some ways, and it's just so gruesome. It's so gruesome, and you just like you see this acceptance and embracing of like the assassin role that they're all in this school. And Billy was so earnest. He was such an earnest character in so many ways that I was just like really like wow. I didn't see it coming. So yeah, it was quite shocking.
Well, it is, and you know, like I said, you didn't really have a good feel for who Petra was before this. And, you know, and she ultimately makes the decision that she's going to survive. She decides to embrace like what it's going to take to survive. And that means killing Billy. And Billy, you talk about him being earnest, and he wasn't ultimately cut out for this life, and he didn't want it. And it's what got him killed, is because he wasn't willing to go where these other kids have been willing to go, and it's what basically cost him. Speaking of which, before we get to Willie and Marcus, we got the other storyline we've had, Kendall and Steven. So we get the showdown with Shabnam. What did you think of this scene? And I'm going to let Haley go first this time because I made her go last on the last
I
one.
was so mad. I was so heartbroken. I was like, if out of this entire volume, I'm sitting there like, maybe, just maybe a little ray of hope, light, love. These two characters are actually going to like fight for each other. And it like, especially when at the beginning, you're like, oh no, this guy is going to kill what's Steven?
Kendall's gonna kill Steven.
Steven.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he's like, no. And you're like, will love triumph in like one moment of deadly class? Wrong. Absolutely wrong. And I was just like, what? What? I was so mad. An audible gasp happened when I flipped to this page and was like, how could he? So yeah. That was honestly, that felt a little bit more shocking in some ways. I don't know, than the Petra Billy scene, because I was just like so kind of invested in like this one moment, like turning out maybe okay. My poor little heart.
Greg, what did you think?
Well, before that even happened, you get the page right before it where Shabnam is, and I'm blanking on what the girl he's with.
Because the troll is a nickname.
The troll, but I forget.
He does have a name though, but I don't remember.
I don't remember.
The troll was there, like, and it literally was like, I forget again, assassins, right? Like they're supposed, like it just kind of feels like she's been there in the background, kind of here, and then she's just like
ready to turn on him.
She turned on him, and she's like, I'm running the show now, and you're just like, oh, yep, she's made a power move right there, and then you almost go, maybe Shabnam doesn't have, the what we think, and then I did not see that betrayal, and I don't even know like if I can go back, but I want to know like how did Shabnam get to
so here's my question.
Yeah.
Like, we've always assumed, this is a question, that Billy or Petra made the phone call. Because he says it's a desperate rat.
As soon as you like started
what is it? Because
knows,
he's grinning when they walk into the room. Right before Steven does it. I think Steven was the desperate rat. I think the phone call was a false flag on Petra and Billy the whole time, personally. Like, I think the Victor and Saya just tracked him down. Like,
is Petra just killing Billy for the fun of it in some ways?
I think she's killing him so she can go back. Like she killed a rat, and same reason Steven's killing Kendall is. I don't know that for sure. We'll see what going ahead, but like, Like
I feel like
think
I'm connecting different dots here, and I'm like, oh my god.
So that's just me. I'm just curious.
Well, because there has to be a connection, and this is why I don't read ahead, Gor, because Gor has to sit there and be like, I can't say anything.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, clearly Steven and Shabnam have made a deal because Shabnam, when they walk in, he's just got a big grin on his face. He's like, this is one of the things I need to happen to put the troll back in her place and to regain control of the situation. Is when this happens, I'm back in control. Gor, what did you think of this whole sequence? Steven, Kendall, all of this.
I think it's just a deal between Steven wanting to be at the table, and his ambition triumphs over love.
Yeah,
Kendall loves Steven, and he's willing to do anything to save him. So in a way, love is there. I mean, I think, but the triumph of love, and regarding Billy and Petra, Billy's just terrified.
Yeah,
he wants out. That's why remember on the writing leaves it. And this is something to keep in mind as the story progresses. These nebulous waters as to what is going on here.
Yeah.
I mean, he does leave room as to who made that phone call, and I hadn't thought about Steven making that phone call. So that's something I'll be thinking about now. JP, I hadn't thought about that. But it's certainly at this point, certainly ambition, and triumphs over love here in this sense. And so that's why he takes him out. But I was really surprised by this and that grin on this man's face, like, and
that's what made me think that was just his grin. He clearly
no idea.
Yeah, he clearly knew what was about to happen.
Well, I mean, he definitely knows at some degree because the way that Steven interacted with him afterwards.
Yeah.
So it just is like, how did he
know? So it just made me think that was the desperate rat, as opposed to like the whole Petra Billy thing was a false flag all along. It's just, I could be wrong, but we'll see.
No, but he leaves it open. It's possible. No, you're right, JP. I mean, it's just thing about the writing. This is something to keep in mind with this book. As it progresses, I'm not sure how you guys are going to feel about this as this goes on.
All right, so we've stalled long enough. The big confrontation of the book, Willie and Marcus. I think it's Gor's turn, but so I will let him go first. I'll let him talk about this whole sequence, this whole conversation between Willie and Marcus. Sorry, I said Billy, but Willie and Marcus.
Yes, certainly. We finally get a clear picture as to what his motivations were, why he was Messiah, why he does feel like he was pushed out, and he admits that his relationship with Saya was really, he was just upset that he was pushed out of once they all got together. But we know, back to what I mentioned earlier, he's a very fragile kid, and he felt betrayed, like something Haley had mentioned before. He just felt betrayed by Marcus, his friend.
Yeah.
And something regarding adolescence. I mean, that's the way adolescence was, when a group of friends that you grew up with or and suddenly have a new group and you're upset about this. But of course, here it takes it to a whole nother level where it involves potential murder. But also Willie, even though his mother was pretty bad to him, I mean, he wants to protect her because Ling's going to come after him. But there's something about this. This is what I wanted to ask you all: is maybe when they seem to make peace, right? And they're walking in, and he says, "Thanks, man. Thanks for talking me down." And he says, "I'm sorry." But note how he has the weapon. See that? And Marcus says, "For what?"
Well, and you notice, though, he has it up when Marcus walks by him, too. So it's the same position that he had it earlier. Like, he didn't change the position. But, yeah.
So, and then we don't, and then he does get killed. And so it's one of those things. I mean, when I first read it, didn't hit me. Then I went back and I said, wait a minute. At first you think he's saying, "I'm sorry for this whole situation," but then you're thinking, "I'm sorry because I want to kill you."
Yeah.
And Gor, I went that same route with you because I know, JP, you said in the panel earlier when he's walking by, the gun's up, but in the panel right before it, the gun is down.
Like, yeah, he does pull it down.
So
like
he
it's
does
up
pull it
and
up
it's
for
down
some-
and then it's up. Yeah.
So I don't know.
I
know
didn't
how that
block
works as
that at
much.
all. Like that the gun goes up, or like at no point did I think he's saying sorry. That's so interesting.
I only thought that because when he that panel, when he says I'm sorry, the look on Willie's face to me and the gun up,
Yeah.
I instantly was like, he's about to shoot him.
Yeah.
And I think I think Marcus felt that way too, because I think Marcus, when he heard the gunshot, was like, he's checking himself.
Yeah.
Now, Grant, he doesn't know any, so that's all he could think about. No one else is there, but I think there's that distrust of like, I don't think, and as much as there's these redemption in some of these relationships, I think we see these characters that there's always going to be this hint of distrust moving forward because there's been so much betrayal going on, and to see that right there of just the whole interaction with Willie, and I'm like, oh man.
So what do you think, Greg? Was he going to shoot him or not?
I think he was. I think he was going to shoot him.
Okay, Haley.
Well, I didn't, but now between Gor and Greg, I feel like yeah. Well, because like all of the panel, like,
go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. But
so I mean, it's clearly Reminder it's with a purpose. He does it with a purpose. Is like he doesn't. He wants you to think like to decide for yourself. Was he or was he not? And
I also feel like to be in the shoes of the characters, right? Like you as a reader are now also filled with distrust for everyone and for everything. Every little movement and action, now you're reading into it. And now, like, does Marcus know what, like, he'll never know what he's sorry for? Was he gonna kill him? He'll never know.
Yeah.
Like, that like ambiguity, I think, is frustrating and so smart and so good.
Because the panel could end it this way. I'm sorry. And nothing, right?
Yeah.
It could have been that way, right? But the fact that he added for what?
Well, and there's also that moment of like the paneling right before where Marcus is like, trust me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's easy. Trust me.
And it's not. That's like not the easiest thing. Like, there is no trust between not really. And even the conversation between them, I think there's something so childlike in the conversation of them like just running away together. It feels like those, you know, like in those movies where you have like those two kids are like, oh, like let's run away and like go, you know, and on these like grand adventures and like get away from this thing and like we could just forget about it all. Yeah. And that never happens. No one ever actually really like that.
Thank you, Toby.
It's all like a pipe dream. So that all feels like there's this like it's happening and there's moments in it where it feels genuine, but it also feels like I'm also wondering too. Okay, now I'm getting really into the like, can you trust any of this? Like, is Willie also like performing in terms of like the suicide, because so much of what we also know about Marcus is this like savior complex that he's like somewhat has in ways like it makes him feel better, which I think that's probably genuine, but I'm like
so I think it's interesting because I think that a lot of what the conversation they're having is very real in terms of like the feeling of betrayal, and Willie is trying to deal with this, and Marcus is trying to deal with everything they've been through. And I actually do trust that he contemplates, because he doesn't want to kill his friend. And I think he does contemplate like just ending himself. But ultimately, his situation has not changed when they're going to leave, which is if he doesn't kill Marcus, Lynn's going to kill his mom.
That's right.
And so I think I think he wants to go with Marcus. I think if he felt like he had a choice, he would go with Marcus. But I don't think he feels like he has a choice. I think he was going to kill him. I think he was going to shoot him.
Yeah, I feel like now I'm with you guys. And then even there's like, I don't know, not that like foreshadowing, but like, I don't know if that would be the right word, but Marcus is like, you're the only good person I've ever known.
Yeah.
And like, and then we're all like, we think he was going to kill him.
Yeah.
No one's good.
Yeah, it's
Gor. What do you think?
I can't say very much anymore. What's going to happen? I just
Well, it's not about what's going to happen, but what would have happened.
No, because I just do not know. I mean, what Haley said is very true about this book. You just can't almost trust what is going to happen. I mean, it is very deliberate in this book. And I know when I first read the comic the first time, I didn't think he would kill Marcus, but when the series concluded and I reread the whole thing again, I began, wait a minute. Again, the fact that Marcus says that, for what?
For what? And
why did he have to add that? Yeah. And then seeing everything, all these, as the story has evolved, and you're thinking, wait a minute. So again, I do not know. He leaves that for conversation as we're having here. Yeah. But we're going to see this. Well, we've already seen it, but we're going to see it a lot more as the story progresses. But as we go on now to this here, right?
I want to be like Greg.
We get to the other part of Marcus in those final pages. But the thing is, Marcus, though, knowing Marcus, you know how he overthinks things.
Right.
He's going to be thinking, what are you sorry for? He's going to be thinking what we're thinking.
Yeah.
Was he going to kill me?
Yeah.
This is going to something. I'm not jumping ahead with the story, but logically, this is how Marcus thinks.
Yeah.
And he's going to be thinking, why did he say that before he shot me, before he was killed? Yeah. He grieves for him, but logically, he's going to be thinking about that, as we are.
Well, and you see him, like, as he's fleeing from Victor, like, he has but he's running, he's like, I'm going to pay him all back, but he's thinking about Willie and Billy and Maria, and, he's not just going to disappear, and then, of course, we get the panel.
Oh, yes.
That Saya is waiting for him.
Yeah.
On the way out, and so then he... they look face to face. He falls to the ground, and you see the tears in her eyes. And then we get the last page of this volume, last few pages, which is him as he's laying there, flashing back to his parents in the balloon, and like, so. Greg, I'm going to let you go first this time. What do you think about the final couple pages there? Where are you at?
I don't know what to think. Saya seems like she's going to be someone who's always been a character that she's going to do what needs to get done, whether it hurts her or other people. She's going to do what needs to be done. So I'm not shocked at that. Like, that shocked me when I first saw it, yes. But like, as I'm thinking and reflecting, I'm like, I'm not shocked that they had her do that to Marcus's character. The gut punch for me was the panel even afterwards. I didn't think could be more of a gut punch after that, but when it's him walking with his parents, they're like, hey, let's go to the bay. And he's like, no, not today. Yeah. He's like, I want to go to the park. And he goes, that's what they'll do. I'm like, so his parents.
But maybe we'll see the swans. Yeah.
And they'll go see the swans, which is what then reflective of. And then it's like, if they would have gone to the bay, would they have not gone underneath the bridge and his parents wouldn't have died? And then I'm just like, and so this is a guilt that Marcus lives with all the time of like, it's just like Bruce Wayne. It deals with guilt of, going out, having to leave in the Batman movie, to to go. So maybe Marcus is Batman, and this is just a prequel to. That's how he's so good at all this. But it's just this is such an. I'm so good with where this story is going. Rick Remender is. I haven't read a lot of Rick's stuff, but this has just been a really well told story, turn after turn, and I'm glad I dug into it, because I feel like volume 1 I wasn't completely sold. I got sold on it more as I talked with y'all, but now I'm just like, let's go.
Oh well, if you know he's always going to bring it back to Batman some way. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Let's.
Gor, what did you think when he turned the page and Saya sticks the blade in him, and then the aftermath of that?
We haven't discussed very much Saya's role in these past 2 issues.
Right.
And one thing Saya does, she saves early on. She did save him earlier.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's because she herself has to take him down and not somebody else. But this is a pattern throughout the series. She keeps saving Marcus.
Yeah.
And now, down here at the end, she's the one who takes him out. Right?
Yeah, and we don't know why she's been saving Marcus, but
maybe she still is. Maybe by her having to kill him is a way of her having to save him later on, and because he has to die. If her family and Willie's family has to live, he has to die basically. And so maybe there's this is still part of her. She can control the story. Again, like, she has to be in control of everything. She might be the one that can say, like, okay, I'm controlling this, and this is how it has to go. I have to make it look like, because Remender has always been like, I'm gonna make you think this, I'll tell you parts of this backstory, and then this gets changed. That maybe this is partially where he's like,
looking ahead, Greg.
I'm just saying, this is what my mind goes to as we're thinking these things.
Well, Saya's ambition is there. Saya's ambition is there. She wants to be the valedictorian of this school. I mean, that's been clear from early on. She's wanted to be the one who, in the end, is at the top. That's why also Shabnam he does feel threatened by her. For now, he just wants to deal with Marcus.
Right.
But in the end, she's also a threat. But that, I think Greg's point regarding that final page in the storyline is basically, after I read this one, I went back and reread the first issue. And basically, this is like an alternate history.
Yeah.
Basically, the mom says, so what do you want to do? You want to go, or the father says, we should take that tour of the bay. And he goes, not today. Let's go to the park. And basically the father says, well, and maybe look at the swans. And when you put it in together, again, if you put these issues side by side like this, when he's thinking about Maria, something that really happened and something that could have happened, and this is the last image he has in his mind before he passes away. And I thought this is absolutely beautiful how this was done.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a very moving. These 2 issues are just very moving, especially if you just read this. If you read the beginning, like Kelly had mentioned, this part, and then here, and then you skip to this part here.
Just the yellow.
It reads beautifully together. Absolutely. You know, and the swans. These are real. He pushed it away. This is not. But it's like love, right? Love, there's a heaviness to love. That's why he rejects it. I mean, because it's not just about feeling pain when you lose it, but it's so overwhelming when he lost his parents. And if Maria is something that he's deeply in love, she's deeply in love with her, and he's thinking, I'm going to lose you at one point, and I can't deal with this, so I'm going to push you away. There's a heaviness to love. There's an absolute heaviness. It's like that book and that novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, where you have a character named Tomas who he can never stay in bed with a woman. After he makes love to her, he has to leave. Then one day, he doesn't. And he's there, and it's overwhelming him, thinking, what has just happened? Yeah. He's in love. And now, the way he sees it, he's in trouble, right? But this final one here, this was just, it was just so well done. I was really impressed by it. I get these 2 issues and how it ties in together and how Greg pointed it out. Just a highlight of this is a highlight of the whole storyline. In my opinion.
All right, Haley, what did you think?
I mean, very much similar to what Greg and Gore were talking about. Like, there was that initial shock, and then in some ways not. Like, when you sit and think about like who Saya is and the character she's played throughout the storyline, but you are like, wait. I also feel like she is so talented as a swordsman and as an assassin that like, is she actually dealing a killing blow?
Well, because she does whisper something to it.
And you have no idea what it is, which I love.
You don't know what it is. Yeah.
I love that you don't know what it is. But then, like, the way that it ended, because, like, it was shocking. I was, like, audibly gasping as I was reading this. And then you turn the page and you get this, like, really emotional moment. And, like, it's so tender. And then it comes full circle to the issue before. And, like, that hit in a totally different way. And it's just, like Greg was saying, you realize the guilt that he's been shouldering this entire time. And like how like he hasn't been able to like know or have like happiness or like love without such a overwhelming pain and sadness and guilt. And also the part of like how it's his fault. Like, it's not just like I've lost you, it's like, no, you lost because of me. Like, I am constantly at the root of all of this horrible, traumatic stuff. And that's from such a young age. And that is so sad.
Yeah.
It's so good. And the art is so good. And there's about it with the coloring too, reading these panels, and in the coloring that's happening, like there's such a like lightness to it that after just going through everything we just went through in this issue, and then to end it here feels like there's such a shift in the tone, but it feels so right at the same time, which is amazing storytelling.
I'm just going to say, Brother John, that's the highest compliment you could give me for one of these discussions, to say that you want to go read. So,
and I got mine at the library, so
there you
and
go.
It's also, if your library is connected with Hoopla, which is the digital aspect, it is on Hoopla too. So I got it there, and I was reading it digitally, and I tried to zoom in on the digital to see what she says. I couldn't.
Yeah.
It's like word letters backwards. It's
I think it's just gibberish.
Or gibberish. I like couldn't even see. I'm like squinting. I'm like, what is that?
That's why I was zooming. I was like, no, I'm going digital with this. Let me know.
What Haley said back in sense of, and I hadn't thought about this, is that, and back to Bruce Wayne, they go see the Mark of Zorro. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Whose idea was it that? Because that's a children's film. Was it Bruce Wayne's mom, dad, let's go to the movies?
Yes.
And so
depends. It depends on who's telling the story. I think there are different variations of it depends on what story they want to tell, tragedy wise. I think they've told it both ways. Of he says to go to the movies, he's like, but Batman Begins, it's in the opera and him leaving. So it's him making the choice. So I think most tend to say that it was Bruce Wayne made the choice to want to go to the movie or leave the theater or whatever to put
like
that.
Either he's like talking them into walking that causes them to cut through the alley, or they just do it that he was the reason they went to the movie in the first place.
Right.
So usually he's in some way responsible for how they got there, at least in his own mind. Like he sees it as he was the reason they were there. So yes.
Don't you're a child when that happens to you, like what happens here, like to Haley's point, that guilt is just so overwhelming.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah. For sure. He definitely is fighting guilt. And I'll just say that like you're left with this whole, I mean, we know enough to know like where this, you don't know for sure where this is going, but how much skill does she have? What is she really trying to accomplish here? Is she trying to get him out, or is she just doing what she thinks she has to? And you feel like Saya always had something more up her sleeve. So
that's smart.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah, the yellow pages are just really, really well done. Well, we're way over an hour and a half. Which we always are. When I love the conversation, so I try not to cut you guys off.
Which is why I'm glad you just decided to go back to one volume, because you know
Yeah.
how we talk. We're like,
I know.
we tried to do two last time, and
We're like just making sure not 2 volumes will never leave the.
So we'll try and go quickly but let you say what you need to. Final thoughts on volume 4. I will let Haley lead us off this time. Final thoughts.
I was just it's so good, and also I have no idea where it's going. Okay. That's like you're just like constantly on your toes, and I'm prepared to be on my toes for the rest of the series, and I can't wait to see where they'll take it, because I mean this was so many twists and turns.
Yeah. Greg.
By far, I started the show, I'll end the show. This was my favorite volume that I read so far. All in all, I think this is there's so much layers and depth. I love what he did with it. I love that, you know, the love triangle got put on the back burner, and I still found this compelling, fascinating. Well done.
Yeah. Gor.
Prologue to heartbreak. That's all I'm going to say.
More?
And this is the next issue.
Yeah, next issue. Sign on the cover.
That's what I was saying. But heartbreak's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I think Haley said something about Kendall and Steven about you hope that love will triumph. I don't know. Keep that in mind. Love is a very important factor here. Yeah. The importance of love, you know, and just just don't give up on it so far at this point. But
I'm always rooting.
Yeah. There you go. My final thoughts are just this. The story I've been building, I was really enjoying it, but this volume took it to another level. Like I said, it was so hard not to just keep going the other night, and the fact that I'm not gonna be like, all right, you guys gonna come back next week, and try to give you, not rush through the rest of this. But I am so looking forward to the rest of this. This is every volume. This has moved up what I think the potential for it to be in terms of how much I love this story and where I would rank it. At this point, I feel like this has the potential to be, if not my favorite, definitely in the discussion for my favorite read of all time. We'll see where it goes. But I am so looking forward to more, and I love the twists and turns. Remender reaches in there and rips your heart out, and shows it to you and laughs, and then he's like, "Oh wait, here's another one. Oh, I'm going to do it again."
Holy Maja.
Just kidding. I put it back. No, I didn't. I'm taking it again. But it's so well done, and I do want to once again, Greg pointed out, the letterer Russ Wooten, the colorist Jordan Boyd, Wes Craig, Rick Remender, the whole team just does a fantastic job on this book.
Did they change colorists? Because I thought Low Ridge did the first series on the first volume I was reading. I thought.
I don't know. It says Jordan Boyd in here. Let's see real quick. Oh, it does. You're right. They did apparently, because.
But it's a Boyd's
issues 1 through 14 was Lee LaRidge.
Yeah, the first issue was Lee LaRidge. That's right.
And then Jordan Boyd clearly does 15, 16, and then through this whole volume, it looks like.
Okay, yeah.
So they did change colors, but
good point. I hadn't thought about that.
So, with that, we're gonna get out of here finally. If anyone wants to hear more Remender talk, I'm gonna be talking Righteous Thirst for Vengeance with John and Whitewell Comics, John's Comics with Kids and Whitewell Comics tomorrow night. So, with that, I'm gonna say thank you to this amazing panel. Thank you to Toby, Brother John, Comic Crank, Old Wolf, everybody that hung out tonight. Much appreciated, and we will see you guys next time. Later.